Okay, here's a quick video on rational exponents. So let's check out exponents that are fractions. So say you had 4 to the power of half and you multiplied it by 4 to the power of a half. Well, if we used our multiplication exponent law, then that just means that we're going to add our exponents. So if we add a half plus a half, that would give us a whole. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 over 2, so that's just actually 1. So 4 to the power of a half times 4 to the power of a half equals 4 to the power of 1. So another way to write 4 to the power of half is actually the square root of 4. Because the square root of 4 times the square root of 4 is like saying 2 times 2, which equals 4. So turns out roots and rational exponents are the same operation. So if we have a square root, we can also write that as a half exponent. Or if we had something like the cubed root of x, another way to write that is x to the power of 1 over 3. Or if we had the fourth root of x, another way to write that is x to the power of 1 over 4. And square roots, like we said, let's put that as an x. So the square root of x is actually x to the power of a half. Because we don't always, well, we don't really ever write it, but in a square root, there's actually a 2 there, telling us it's the square root. Okay, so then let's see what that means for us. So if let's say we had the square root of x and that was to the power of 4. Let's find a different way to write that. So we know the square root part we can write as an exponent 1/2, and the 4 is still an exponent on that. And then using our power of a power rule, we know that we multiply our exponents together. So that would make it x to the power of 4 over 2. So it's interesting that like the root part, 2, is on the bottom of our fraction, and then the exponent part ends up on the top of our fraction, which 4 over 2 actually just simplifies to x squared. So it turns out if you had a number that was square rooted to the power of 4, another way to write that is just writing x to the power of 2. Okay, let's try another one. So let's say we had the cubed root of y to the power of 2. So another way to write that would be y to the power of 1/3 squared. And then using our power of power rule, 2 times 1/3 is 2 over 3. So we can get really fast at writing these. So if we had the cubed root of x to the power of 4, we know we could just write it in one step. We know it's going to be x, we know the exponent ends up on the top of the fraction, and the root part ends up on the bottom. So we got 4 over 3. If we wanted to write the 7th root of x to the power of 2, we know we just write the 2, the exponent on top of the fraction, and the 7 on the bottom. And sometimes you might see this stuff written like this. So you could see it written like the cubed root of x squared, where they put the exponent on the x. Doesn't change anything though. Now it's almost like the reverse. It's just saying we have x squared to the power of 1/3, which is still the same thing as x to the power of 2 over 3. It doesn't really matter how they write it. So if we have the 4th root of y to the power of 2, we're still going to write that as exponent on top of the fraction and the root part on the bottom. So y to the power of 2 over 4, which we can actually just simplify to y to the power of a half. Okay, so we can use that when we simplify exponent laws. When we simplify exponents. So say we had 3x squared times y to the power of 3, and all of that was to the power of, wait, actually, I'm going to change this number. Okay, let's make that a 9. And I'm going to put all of it to the power of a half. Okay, so now using my power of a power law, I know I have to put everything to the power of a half. So 9 to the power of a half, x, so then I have to multiply 2 times a half. So 2 times 1 is 2, 1 times 2 is 2, so I just have x. I'll just show that. So when I'm multiplying these two, 2 times a half equals 2 over 2, which is 1. Okay, and then y, 3 times a half would become 3 over 2. So that's what I would get. And if I wanted to simplify it, well, I know 9 to the power of a half is actually the square root of 9. And I know the square root of 9 is actually just 3. So it would become 3x y to the power of 3 over 2. Done.